Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to my presentation on asking effective questions in the classroom, or as I like to call it, asking the right questions. My name is Kelly Jesperson. So my core value as an educator guiding this particular research problem centers around the idea that I believe in order to be an effective educator of 21st century learners, I have a moral, professional duty to stimulate creative and critical thinking in the classroom. As an educator, I value a democratic classroom where students take ownership of their learning through inquiry-based learning activities and critical thinking opportunities. By fostering opportunities for effective questions to stimulate this inquiry, I believe students will emerge from their educational experiences better individuals to work alongside in the workforce, as well as thoughtful and discerning global citizens. Learners in today's classrooms need to emerge into society creative thinkers, critical problem solvers, and discerning consumers of information. As such, the learning environment in school needs to support these expectations by encouraging students to pose and answer complex questions, understand where students can go to get reliable information, and furthermore, how students might filter accurate, credible evidence from inaccurate and incredible evidence. By asking more questions of students instead of simply supplying the information, I believe I can foster these 21st century skills in students that society is requiring of them. In the current classroom climate, students face the issue of being inundated with too much information that is unreliable. Additionally, the sheer breadth of information students have access to does not always require them to evaluate its importance, its relevance, or even its significance in relation to any given task. As such, asking effective questions in the classroom will help students to practice and hone these skills to emerge as more astute learners. In keeping in mind my personal core values, as well as the current climate of classroom education, it led me to the following research question. Given that my practicum placement was within a physical education context and my major is in this particular area, I decided to center my research question in the context of physical education. Therefore, how do I improve my questioning in the physical education classroom to stimulate student inquiry-based learning and critical thinking and develop 21st century learners? Additionally, how might I foster student inquiry through questioning in the physical education classroom? These particular questions can be conducted with students in the physical education classroom setting from grades 1 all the way to grade 8. Before we can proceed by a further exploration of the topic, we must first arrive at a common understanding of key terms. Inquiry-based learning, according to the Ministry of Education, is a form of learning that is initiated through posing questions, problems, or scenarios rather than simply facts and information. This process is guided by a facilitator and positions the student's questions, ideas, and observations at the core of the learning experience. Through this process, both the educators and the students take ownership of the learning environment. Critical thinking can be defined as a method of thinking about a situation, a problem, or an event that causes the thinker to improve the quality of their thought processes by reconstructing, monitoring, and self-correcting it. 21st century skills can be identified as a set of abilities necessary for students to develop in order to succeed in the information age. They are grouped into the categories of literacy skills, life skills, and of particular interest for this study, learning skills, as learning skills encompass the skills of critical thinking, creative thinking, collaborating, and communicating. And finally, the notion of questioning can be thought of as strategies of asking for information of learners in order to be able to stimulate thought, foster participation and collaboration, and then probe students to think differently about course material. Research was conducted to identify common themes, current trends, challenges, and the relevance of asking effective questions as it pertains to fostering 21st century learners and enabling student inquiry. The following slide provides an overview of the information received from the research. All authors agree that effective questioning is not a spontaneous act. The authors argue that while educators ask over 400 questions to their students on a daily basis, a more thoughtful and technical approach to questioning can probe students towards deeper thinking and engagement of the course content. One main argument is that planning effective questioning in advance of the lesson and anticipating student responses are the most critical component that will dictate the success of an inquiry-based learning lesson. In order to prepare the correct questions, authors argue a good starting point is having students begin with inquiry-based activities, which allows students to get into the free flow of inquiry-based learning and stimulates them to continue to ask questions. Additionally, authors argue that asking good questions requires educators to diversify and scaffold the complexity of the questions. By incorporating multiple types of questions into the classroom and diversifying strategies, students think deeply about what they are trying to achieve, seek explanations and alternatives more frequently, and develop skilled thinking practices consistent with 21st century competencies. When educators diversify the complexity of questions according to Bloom's taxonomy, they ensure that multiple types of learners are engaged and gives everyone a place to enter into the discussion into the lesson. Additionally, authors suggest that scaffolding the types of questions from the beginning of the unit, where the questions should be more content-based, to the end of the unit, where the questions should be more metacognitive. Students will be more engaged, and then the questions can also reflect the type of learning that should be happening as the units progress. Finally, the research identified that effective questioning provides students opportunities for more robust learning and encourages students to synthesize connections between ideas, take ownership over their own learning, manipulate course material to their understanding, seek explanations rather than rely on teacher input, and develop procedural understanding as well as content understanding. Authors agree that teaching everything from the curriculum is a labor-intensive and oftentimes impossible task to achieve throughout the school year. Teachers are unable to teach, and students are unable to learn everything there is to know. By employing rigorous and quality questioning strategies in the classroom, teachers can develop lifelong learners who will be better equipped to read and study independently outside of the classroom. As is the case with my particular study within the physical education classroom, it is necessary to employ these rigorous and quality questioning techniques in order to aid students in becoming lifelong, critical 21st century learners. I will use a combination of anecdotal notes and observations, exit tickets, and summative assessments in order to collect data. Anecdotal notes and observations will be accumulated from my observations, conversations, and student-generated products, which include video and audio recordings. Anecdotal notes will form the bulk of my data. They are a valid and reliable source of data as they are underpinned by my own professional judgment. They comment on what students have learned, and they can accurately provide context for understanding what effective questions I am posing, how students are interacting with these questions through their participation, and how I need to adjust questioning when moving forward. These anecdotal notes will provide insight on student problem solving, skill performance, and will be evidenced of higher level thinking. Exit tickets will form assessment as learning and are a valuable product for me to collect to understand how students negotiate the effective questions I am posing. Exit tickets will allow me to gather evidence from each student on their own particular learning, which I will be able to cross-reference with my anecdotal comments and observations, as well as their summative assignments. This forum will allow me to directly pose questions related to my research study to obtain valid information. In these exit tickets, I will be sure to ask mixed questions in terms of qualitative and quantitative in order to get a more accurate picture of student understanding and achievement. Summative assessments will be used in conjunction with the aforementioned data sources as they provide challenges for measuring the ways in which teaching practices can lead to change. Summative assessments, as outlined by Putnam and Rock, render it hard to develop conclusions specific to the teaching practices that led to change. Therefore, They will be used to help support the data collected in alternative sources rather than drive conclusions regarding my interventions. As such, summative assignments are less of a practical tool and will instead form a support to my anecdotal notes and observations, as well as exit tickets, as well as a front runner of data collection. In light of my particular research question, these three data sources are the most relevant in order to capture information regarding student achievement and critical thinking. The student participants for my research will be classroom students, grades 1 to 8. In order to ensure reliability, my sources will be consistent throughout the grades. I understand the need to scaffold the questioning between grades due to the developmental stages and differences in what we are learning, but I will make sure that each grade is consistent. Additionally, I will spiral the learning in the classroom so that each grade is working on the same curriculum expectation at the same time, which will allow me to see variations and similarities between classes. By choosing data sources that are both qualitative and quantitative, I will ensure a complete picture of student achievement. I will ensure validity by having a combination of student-generated data, such as conversations, exit tickets, summative assessments, audio and video recordings, as well as teacher-generated data, such as my own anecdotal notes and observations, in order to clearly capture student learning and verify my assessments whenever possible. This will ensure truthfulness of data. Finally, I will triangulate my data in that I will use a combination of conversation, observation, and product when assessing the effect of questioning on student learning. I will be able to adapt my research to reach all types of students. I will ensure that important questions are posed in the first language of English language learners or translated for them by another helpful student in the class who will share their first language. I will ensure that all students are able to comprehend the nature of questioning asked and scaffold each question as I see necessary. I will differentiate for individual students so that I might get a clearer picture of student learning. When collecting data, I will need to take into account the practicality of collection. As such, anecdotal notes will be practical enough for me to collect such information on a daily basis throughout the school year. I may not be able to collect individual pieces of information on each student on a daily basis. However, I will be able to comment on student achievement on a daily basis. Exit tickets will form a valuable source of information and will be practical for me to conduct on a weekly basis during the school year. Summative assessments will inform and support anecdotal notes and exit tickets and will be collected at the end of the unit from September to April. Taking into consideration the ethical ramifications of this study, I will take extra precautions to ensure student confidentiality by only supplying relevant information as it pertains to this study. Pieces of information that will be kept within the study will be relevant information such as student age, grade, and exceptionality as is relevant within the physical education context. I will take care to retain student confidentiality by removing pieces of information that will unmask student identity, such as names of individual students, names of the school, and any other sort of specific information. I will ensure data is kept secure by keeping it locked inside filing cabinets, inside my office, or kept within a password-protected computer. I will also be sure to obtain the necessary permission from the school board and administration in advance of conducting the study. This action research project is valuable as it is causing me to reflect and plan for pedagogical practices. Especially as a pre-service teacher, I found in my past placements I spend much time and attention on curriculum content and timelines. By focusing more on the outcomes of 21st century learners and inquiry-based learning, I return to emphasizing practices designed at receiving these outcomes. Furthermore, due to the political, economic, and social climate of today's world, I need to be continually reevaluating the way in which I prepare students to enter into this world post-graduation. As a result of this process, not only was I able to critically focus on and improve my own teaching strategies, but I was able to identify some key tools to help me better prepare students in my classroom to act as discerning, critical, thoughtful investigators of content, which is consistent to prepare discerning 21st century learners.